to When We Talk podcast, a place where we talk about everything from life, marriage, being single, conflict in marriage, conflict in relationships. We even talk about faith. This episode is hosted by Kenneth Bonner, Reggie Smith, and Jacqueline Wells. Welcome again to the When We Talk podcast. This is Kenneth Bonner,
Reggie Smith,
and Jacqueline Wells.
Today's topic, we want to talk about why is marriage frowned upon? And the reason we're coming up with that topic is because I've heard from several people, as well as the other hosts have heard from people where they say that I'm just not interested in getting married. Half of the time is just because they don't want to do all the paperwork before, and if it doesn't work out, the paperwork after. Other reasons for not getting married is because many people probably already have the benefits of a marriage, even though they're not married. So I'm going to leave it at that thought and let you two go ahead and start diving into this topic.
So why is marriage frowned upon? I guess what I would say on this topic is that I think that a lot of people automatically have the idea of marriage based off of what they've seen. Maybe it's, from when they were growing up and how marriage looked based off of their parents' marriage or their grandparents' marriage or, a friend of a family's marriage. So, it could be different aspects, in my opinion, on why people don't want to get married or they feel like it's just too much work. So I just honestly feel that if you're really not interested in getting married, and if it's something that you're not ready for, then simply don't do it. You can't base your marriage on the looks of what marriage looked like based off of what you see. And I think that a lot of people do that, just out of habit. And they, think that it's okay for them to have those ideas based off of what they've seen through other people. But, I think marriage is beautiful. If you are upfront and honest about the different goals and what you're trying to accomplish, and you're in conversation with your partner on what the expectations are, I think that marriage can be a beautiful thing. But if you're not really interested in wanting to be married based off of what you see through others, I think that's the wrong approach.
Well, I think that why it's frowned upon can come from a number of different aspects. And one of those could be fear. A lot of people have heard the horror stories of marriage, past relationships, kind of piggybacking off of what Jackie said. Our parents, our grandparents, we may have saw some good things about it, but we also witnessed a lot of bad things about it. And when you're a young person, you're very impressionable. Your mind is still being molded, and you see some things in a relationship that may have happened between mom and daddy, aunt and uncle, grandmother and grandfather. And in your mind, you're like, is that how it's really supposed to be? And if it's how it's supposed to be, then I don't want to get married. You know what I'm saying? I've heard younger kids that I've counseled and I've talked to, when talking about relationships, they'll be like, I don't want to get married because X, Y, and Z, or these factors that I just pointed out. A lot of people, as they've gotten older, and they may have had friends who have been in relationships or married, they realize that relationships hurt. They're not all blissful like we portray it to be on the wedding day, because once you say I do and get behind closed doors, as blissful as the marriage could be, or as promising as the marriage could be, relationships hurt. Let's just be honest. There's aspects of the relationships that hurt, whether it be a illness or something that takes place with your spouse, or, combativeness. You guys are at each other's throats, especially in the beginning, and it doesn't feel good. Also, marriage is a full-time job. Marriage is not a job that you can just take off and be like, I'm going to use PTO time from. From the time you get off from your real job, you come home and it's another job, because you have to constantly, daily maintain and try to create balance in that marriage. And a lot of people are not willing to do that, because especially now we're in the me movement, or the me generation, where I'm just worried and focused on me. I really don't have time for a relationship. And then I think last is that just like we have done statistics and studies on other things, and you see the climb and the fall or the balance of that particular entity, they've also come to realize that the marriage rate and the divorce rate is very, very high. So it's like in your mind is that, why would I get married? Because looking at the statistics, it doesn't fare well. So I might fall into that statistic. And if a person is like me, I never wanted to be a statistic in anything, although I am. But there are certain things you just don't want to be a part of. So why venture into that when I know from a statistical standpoint, it's not very high and promising?
I want to jump in and say that I think one of the things you said is the biggest reason, and that's fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of how this relationship's going to work, fear of past relationships. But I also want to say that I think that people do not see the value in being married. And when you don't see the value in doing something, then you're not going to invest your time. You're not going to devote your attention. You're not going to give all of you to something that you don't believe in or that you do not see the value in. And because of that, you have a whole lot of people who are intimidated by the thought of marriage, because when you drive down the highway, you see a number of billboards: divorce lawyer, get a divorce for $50, $49.95 or $300 or whatever the going rate is right now. And like you said, the statistic, nobody wants to be a statistics. A lot of people say they don't believe in divorce, but there's a lot of people that don't believe in marriage as well, because they are now in situations and they are comfortable in those situations where it's just too much paperwork to go through the process of getting married. So I also believe that fear is the biggest thing, and people just don't see the value in it. And as we all know from experience, marriage is something that you work towards every day, although you're joined together as one, because I like to describe it, the process of two becoming one. And it's a process. And the reason I said it's a process of two becoming one, because you are all two individuals. And even though you find compatibility somehow, you come together. Now, how do you take who you are and who I am and become this one person, so that we're functioning and operating on the same path? But I believe that people are afraid of losing themselves. They don't want to lose who they are. Like you said, Reggie, the me. They don't want to lose that part of themselves. And they think that getting into marriage will cost them everything, and they'll lose all of who they are.
Well, would that be a fear thing, or would that be a commitment thing? I do agree that I think that fear plays a part in you having the unknowns once you become married. But ultimately, I believe, we all know what marriage is. Marriage is a commitment between two people who's wanting to join their lives together, forever and ever, until death do us part. So I think, people who are afraid to get married is it because I don't want to be on that level of commitment that comes with marriage? And think about it, when you're single, you just have yourself to worry about. When you become married, there's a whole lot of other things that come into play, when you're getting involved with somebody else, because it's not just the other person that you're getting involved with. You're also getting involved with their family and, sometimes their friends and a lot of other things that they have going on. So I get that you might feel like you're losing your oneness. But at the end of the day, I just think that if it's all about commitment and what you're ready to and where you see yourself going.
That's still fear, right?
Yeah, it's fear, but it's also commitment, I think. Because that's what marriage is. Marriage is about being committed to only one other person. And if you're honestly not ready to be committed in a relationship with just one other person, then marriage probably isn't on their mind, in my opinion.
I want to go back to, and Kenneth mentioned it a couple of times, where there have been some people who have made the statement or using paperwork as one of the reasons why they won't get married. And that strikes me as kind of odd, because you fill out just as much paperwork to get a house. You fill out just as much paperwork to get a car. You fill out just as much paperwork to get that cell phone that you own 24 minutes. So I haven't heard no one tell me that. I wish they would, because I'm going to hit them with that. And now that right there is just a cop out to me. That's just an excuse, because everything that we get, there's some type of paperwork. And the last time I checked, it wasn't a whole lot of paperwork that was involved to get married.
But
Some
listen,
sign-
though, when you say a whole lot of paperwork, you're still signing the dotted line and making
Right.
a commitment to pay that mortgage payment, making a commitment to pay that car note. And I'm thinking from the perspective of it's too much paperwork is you're legally binding yourself to another person, basically, from that aspect of it being too much paperwork. So I agree with you too, Reggie. I mean, paperwork is just a piece of paper that binds us to, to be conjoined together in marriage. But at the end of the day, it's more than just the paperwork involved behind marriage.
So let me come from the perspective of what I think that statement is about. So when you talk about paperwork, of course there's paperwork to get married, but there's also paperwork to get divorced. And when you get divorced, now you have to divide up all these assets and go back and forth to court and spend this money and all this other stuff that comes along with it. And nobody wants to do the paperwork for that. Now, I get that signing a mortgage and signing for insurance and signing for all these things is a level of commitment. But when all you've seen around you is divorce, broken relationships, people cheating, people doing this, people doing that, all kind of stuff going on, then that's the thing that people want to avoid. They don't want to make that, like you said, Jackie, commitment to something when I don't see the value in it, because the only thing that I see is people go through all this paperwork, and I've seen what they went through from getting married to going through divorce to having to pay child support or whatever the situation may be, and having to divide up these assets, and it affects this person's credit. Now I got to go do all this to get my credit back right. There's a lot that comes with that. You get what I'm saying? And that's why I'm saying that I can understand a person's, thought process of, man, I don't want to go through all that paperwork process. So it's easier for me to just, be in a relationship with whoever, do whatever, and go how I feel without making this whole commitment with all the paperwork just to end up in the position to where I'm where I didn't want to be anyway.
Well, what about states that's common law marriage, where you don't have to physically be committed to someone through paper, but because you've been together for a long time, you still have to divide up assets, right?
Yes.
I mean, so you know what I'm saying?
Depends on where you're at, though. Because if you come in a relationship with it, you don't have to divide it. But if it's something that you all gained and got together, then yes, you have to split those up.
It's still paperwork involved. At the end of the day, it don't matter how much you came in a relationship with, even if y'all have accumulated a lot of things within that time frame of y'all being together, there's still some type of divide that's going to happen if you decide to go your separate ways. So you know what I'm saying? I get the idea of it, I don't want to do all of that, because if you have that fear mentality in your mind before you decide to get married, to where you're already thinking about what's going to happen if we divorce, then you probably shouldn't be thinking about marriage.
But I also think that you need to also weigh your pros and cons before you enter into anything, because for every beginning there's an ending. Now that ending you would hope that ending might not be in divorce, but I think that I don't know if it's safe to say that you always have to plan for the what ifs. That's just me. You plan for the what ifs. Now, I'm not saying that you enter into the relationship thinking that I'm going to plan for what if a divorce happened, but I think that I just don't think that you should go into any type of relationship with, I don't know,
without counting up the cost.
Because I'm not saying have a contingency plan. I'm not saying have a get out of jail free card. But I do think that with anything, because I'm pretty sure when you sign those papers to get that house, you're not thinking that I'm going to default on it. Mm-hmm. But, based on the economy and how it can shift and jobs are not stable, somewhere in the back of your mind, there is what if this doesn't happen, which is why you go get insurance in the event of death or in the event of this specific thing happening. So I just think that when you enter into a relationship, you have to plan for the what ifs, but you hope that the what ifs never happen.
But think about what you just said, though. When I buy a house, you're hoping that, you don't think about all that stuff because you see the value in buying that house. You know, your pros of the fact that house could increase in value and you can gain a lot of money out of it. And if things get hard, then you can just sell it. That outweighs the fact of, okay, what if taxes go up? Okay, what if the economy shifts? Okay, what if I lose my job? You get what I'm saying? My backup plan is insurance. But when people thinking about getting in marriage, what if this person cheats on me? Blah, 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 blah. They have all those inhibitions going into the relationships. And I agree with Jackie. You shouldn't get married, or you shouldn't even be thinking about it if that's the way that you're approaching the thing. And I also feel like people select choices or select people and base the whole entire thing off of their poor choice in the person that they're committed to.
Yeah. And I have to disagree on that standpoint, because I would never want to enter into a marriage. It's just like me entering into a marriage with my husband with the what ifs, what if type of mentality of us possibly going through divorce, because, you know, me and my husband has already made the decision that divorce is not an option. You know what I'm saying? And I think, again, it's going to be on a case by case basis and where that headspace is between those two individuals, you know. And when you get into the marriage and it gets to the place to where you absolutely cannot come to an agreement to stay married, then that's just the choice that, as you know, as a couple, that you've agreed upon. But I don't think that is healthy for a person to plan for disaster to happen when it comes to marriage, and thinking that I need to come up with a plan B just in case this thing don't pan out. And I get it. You know what I'm saying? I think there's certain, like you said, you have to have life insurance and you have to plan for the unknowns that should happen. But when it comes to being committed to another person and making the decision to live your life, you know, with them for the rest of your lives, then you shouldn't have a plan B of what if something should happen or something should go wrong. That's just my take on it.
I agree. And I think it also comes with maturity too. You know, where are you all, like you said, in that headspace? Are you all mature enough to say, okay, we're not getting divorced? Because I tell you right now, my wife has already told me, she said, I don't care what we go through or how rough things get. If you're talking about going to a hotel, guess who's going to be sleeping in that hotel with you?
Right.
You know, we going to go through whatever we have to do to work it out. And I feel the same way. I feel, though, that sometimes people are afraid to take risks. And I do think a large of it is because of their afraid to commit to anything. And I think the other side is just fear, period. You know, nobody, if you have a perspective about marriage that the only thing is going to end up in is divorce, then of course you shouldn't think about it at all. You know, but like Reggie was talking about the house and all the other paperwork you sign, when you sign a contract for a home, you're married to that home, unless you decide to divorce the relationship and sell the home. You know, same thing with the car note. You go get a car, you in a relationship with that car, that lender now. You know, you're in that relationship until you pay that lender off. But marriage is not the same thing. And you can't pay a marriage off. But most people look at it that way because it ends up in paperwork if they go through divorce. But I still feel that, again, when trying to get on that level or even contemplating that level, then you probably should have some kind of premarital counseling just to make sure that you're in the right headspace. You know, and again, if you're choosing a partner that, you know, don't have the ability to commit, or that has a track record of commitment, granted, people can change, but if they have a track record of not being responsible with their money or flirting with other people, men, women, or, you know, just all kind of stuff that are flags, if you don't pay attention to that in the beginning, then chances are is you're going to end up in that situation and you're not going to be happy about it, which is leading to your reason for not wanting to be in marriage.
I'm going to leave that one alone. For the simple fact is that everything that we do involves a risk. I'm just going to leave it at that, because I don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm saying that there should be some type of fallback plan or a contingency plan. I'm not saying that, and maybe I didn't convey it right, but yeah, I'm going to leave that one alone. But I do want to say, I'm going to leave that one alone. But I am going to say that is that as much as people frown about getting married, there are also people who frown about being in the marriage. That's also a thing as well. And what I mean by that is that, you know, life is happening. You know, you guys are still trying to build and forge relationships. And there are times that even in the marriage, you kind of think like, maybe this is too much, or I don't know how long I can deal with this. So just as much as people frown about not getting married, there are people in relationships who also frown while they're in marriage. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes the arguments or sometimes things happen and causes so much discontent and uneasiness. You have, I'm sorry if anyone tells me, oh, I've been married to this person for 10, 15 years and I haven't thought not once, whether, was this the right move, or if I could continue, or I don't know if I can deal with this type of behavior or something. Those are just examples, because there's a lot of things in the confines of the relationship that kind of strike you and kind of hurt you. You know what I'm saying? And you, just as much as people frown outside of the marriage, people frown inside of the marriage. And anybody tell me otherwise, I don't believe them. I don't believe them. Now, that's not to say that you don't love your spouse. That's not to say that, I'm moving towards divorce court. No. But marriage gets hard. And sometimes as you're dealing with the pressures of real life, the world, working, children, you also have to deal with the pressures of the relationship. And just like with anything, eventually we all crack under some amount of pressure. And being around that amount of pressure has you thinking sometimes, especially when emotions are high. So as you think about one side, it also happens on the inside of the marriage as well.
I would have to definitely agree with you on that. Yes, definitely. Now, I'm
wow,
just
you got an agreement from Jackie, Reggie. This is new. You're breaking ground.
I heard a small pause, and I had my fingers crossed, like, here we go. I'm like, okay, Jackie, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but I'm serious. What marriage isn't tested? What marriage don't go through the day-to-day issues and have to deal with, differences of opinion and differences of how the household is ran or how things are going? That happens in marriage. That's why I just think that it's so important to make sure that you have the right people in your life to help you through those moments. Now, do my husband get on my nerves sometimes? Yes, he does. You know what I'm saying? And has it ever got to that point to where you like, I ain't signed up for this? Yeah, we've all had that, like you said, Reggie. But I just think that it's just so important when you get to that level of maturity to understand that, yes, I love my spouse and I'm willing to work through these things. It's important to have the right people around you to help you work through that. Now, I'm not talking about you women going to talk to your single friends about what's going on in your household. You definitely need to have a reliable source, somebody who you can depend on, who you can confide in to give you the right guidance that you need to work through whatever those issues is, whether it's your pastor or whether it's a counselor, whether it's, another married couple that you trust with the information that you're sharing. And then it's not going to go back on social media or to your family members about what's going on in your household. But if you have someone that can help you in your marriage to work through those issues, then I think that that's very important. But I agree with you, Reggie. I think that when we're going through life and when we're partnering with someone, issues will arise, and those questions in the back of your mind can come up like, okay, I don't think I signed up for this. Let me go back on my knees and make sure that this is who God told me I should be with, but I just think that it's just important. It's just as important to make sure that, if you are committed to someone and you guys are in marriage, that, when you are going through those difficult times, once you get back to the place to where you can come to a resolve and have a conversation about what happened in that blow up, then have that conversation. Otherwise, make sure you have someone in your corner that you trust that can help guide you through those problems.
So I would agree with you. And those are great points. I think that this is something to me that I frown upon is people fight harder and work harder towards getting out of the marriage than they do at working to make the marriage get better. And marriage is frowned upon from the inside because all of those kids and people that are around you, they're witnessing these actions. They're seeing the challenges that you go through, how you're working out these challenges. If you're even attempting to work out these challenges, if you're sleeping in separate rooms, if you're having all this, everything is separated, and people see that. And that's the reason that they're frowning upon. And then also, if you're a person that your relationship is struggling and you're seeing other people having success in their marriage, then you can become bitter because you're too busy looking at and focusing on everybody else's situation, not realizing that in order for those people to have that successful relationship, They had to go to through their problems too, their challenges too. And marriage is not just going to be something you enter in and then all of a sudden it's great. If you go back to what I said in the beginning, it's the process of two becoming one. Marriage is a process. Nothing's going to be perfect every day. You have to ask these people who have been married 49, 50, even 20, 30 years, how did they make it this far? And I believe the number one common denominator is that we didn't give up. And so I feel that if you're in a marriage and you're frowned upon, I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Jackie, that you have to be surrounded by people who can give you the right advice, people who will hold you accountable to make sure you're not in your own head or even in the way of the marriage becoming successful. Because a lot of times we do that finger pointing and thinking that it's the other partner and it's us. Sometimes we're not meeting people's needs because we're whatever, mindset we're in, or sometimes we're not being as supportive, or sometimes we're just disconnected. It could be because of work. It could be because of anything. But when you get around the right people that can help you recognize those things, because there's always two sides of a street. She has one side and you have a side. But when you have people that hear what you say and they can give you some serious conversation or some insight so that you can hold yourself accountable, then maybe you can sit down and have a conversation with your spouse and you all can work towards doing whatever y'all need to do to make sure that things get back where they need to be.
I agree. So my question is that you made a statement. You said, connected or lose the connection. How do you reconnect in a time where, of course, the statistics say something different? Previous relationships that you have seen in the past from maybe parents or whatever like that, and now there's a strain on the relationship, strain on the marriage, and there needs to be some reconnection before disconnection. So how do you do that? And I know you say, getting around people, who are share the same common goals and ground, and you can play the mediator or whatever like that. But what if you don't have any of those other factors and you just have two people who are at odds in, and they are trying not to become that statistic? What do you do?
So if you think about it, if you have weeds growing in your yard, you can pull up the weeds all day long. But if you don't get down to the root of the weeds when you're pulling them up, then all you're going to have is another season come by and those weeds are going to grow again. So my advice would be, we have to go back and trace where the arguments happen. What started this? Why do I feel this way? Why do you feel that way? We need to go back to the root of the problem, because if we can go back to the root of the problem, then we won't be putting Band-Aids over wounds, hoping that they get better. We can actually get some serious healing. And in my opinion, sometimes that does take counseling. Sometimes it like Jackie said, counseling with your pastor, or maybe seeking somebody who's a professional that can help you get there. But you have to go back to the root of the problem. And when you go back to the root of the problem and you both recognize what caused these issues, then maybe you both can make some changes. And the fact that you're making changes and adjustment, maybe that love arises again and you see and realize, okay, you know what? I fell in love with you for a reason. And maybe you can start from there. That's the starting point. But you have to get to the root of why we're losing our connection or why we're disconnected. I mean, people get on different pages all the time, but you have to find that balance to get back on the same page so that you can move forward and continue to be successful.
So my question to you and Jackie is, and this question is to you and Jackie, but for those who are listening that may have questions or for someone else that they can help, what do you tell those individuals who may have an idea that they want to get married, but they have all these factors that we have discussed, the horror stories, the fear, previous relationship, what I saw from my parents? What do you convey over to them to kind of help them sway from the red light and the caution lights to the green light? What would you possibly say as it pertains to marriage? And not just from your own personal, what you've experienced in your relationship, but just a blanket, I guess you could say, cookie cutter type answer that'll be like, something that makes a little bit of sense outside of, I don't want to do it because of paperwork or the statistics that I see. What would you all say to someone else that could possibly help somebody else?
I would definitely tell that person that marriage is not something that you walk into lightly. You know what I'm saying? It's something that you definitely have to have an approach to understand that you are not just affecting your own life, you're affecting the life of somebody else. If you're not ready for the love and the commitment that it takes to be committed to another person, then you really probably shouldn't think about marriage, because it's a lot that goes into marriage. It's not just about courting someone or having the idea of because you look good together, but you really have to understand that marriage takes work. It's patience, it's humility, it's time, honesty, and trust, and communication, selflessness. So I would tell a person, to definitely think about yourself and what it is that you want out of life. What do you see yourself building with somebody else? And if you are truly and honestly and mature enough to enter into that type of commitment, that's what I would tell a person.
Jackie said a mouthful for we can end the show, Reggie, but I'm going to try to get something in. Right. What I think too is preparation. You have to prepare your heart for all that marriage comes with, and you can't really prepare because a lot of things are unknown, but you can do a lot of study and research on things that study your partner, study your mate, study women, study men. There's a lot of research out there that could potentially help you, and you can learn from a lot of successful married couples that are out there, how they keep their balance, what they do to become successful. And be honest with yourself and your partner to tell them whether you're ready for this or you need more time or whatever the case. It's okay to do that. And I just say, get some premarital counseling as well, just to make sure that you are ready.
That's good stuff.
Good stuff. I like it.
You don't have anything else, Reggie?
Oh, nah, I'm good.
Well, again, host another great show. I think this one is probably going to help a lot of people who have these questions. So I guess until next time, keep your head up.
Keep God first.
And keep it moving.